This is going to be an interesting day. We're going to start by just praying before we ever start the Torah portion. So if y'all will just join me for a second. Father, we just welcome you into this moment. And into this place. And Father, I just give you this next 10 minutes, praying, Father, that you will be glorified and that your will be done. In the name of Yeshua. I always seem to cry when I get here. It's really not you all. Shabbats are just special to me. And God moves my heart a lot more on the Sabbath than he does any other time because, generally speaking, I give him more room on the Sabbath than I do any other time. So this week's Torah portion, I'm not even going to try the Hebrew, but it is in Genesis chapter 37 and goes through chapter 40. The half Torah is in Amos, chapters 2 and 3, parts of each one of those. But I'd recommend reading the whole thing. Okay, because if I move this music stand, I'm probably going to fumble everything, so grace, just have grace. All right, so we're going to start. This has been an interesting day. It's kind of a roller coaster, but we're going to start with chapter 37, and I'm just going to read it. It's not that long. Hang on. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. And this is the genealogy of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of the children, because he was the son of his old age. And also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, and then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, 'Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?' So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, 'Look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me.' So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, 'What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come and bow down to the earth before you?' And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. And then his brothers went to feed their father's flocks in Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, 'Are not your brothers feeding the flock in Shechem? Come, I will send you to them.' And so he said to him, 'Here I am.' And then he said to him, 'Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me.' So he sent him out of the valley of Hebron and went to Shechem. And now a certain man found him, and there he was, wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, 'What are you seeking?' So he said to him, 'I am seeking my brothers. Please tell me where they're feeding their flocks.' And the man said to him, 'They have departed from here. For I heard them say, "Let us go to Dothan." So Joseph went after his brothers, and he found them in Dothan. And now, when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. And they said to one another, 'Look, this master of dreams is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and then we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. But we shall see what becomes of his dreams.' But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hand. And he said, 'Let us not kill him.' And Reuben said to them, 'Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father.' And so it came to pass, when Joseph had come to his brothers, that they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. And then they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty, and there was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and there was a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. and their camels bearing spices, balm, and myrrh on the way to carry them down to Egypt. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Then Midianite traders passed by. And my translation says, "So the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And then they took Joseph to Egypt. And then Reuben returned to the pit, and indeed Joseph was not in the pit, and he tore his clothes. And then he returned to his brothers and said, 'The lad is no more, and I, where shall I go?' So they took Joseph's tunic, killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the tunic in the blood. And they sent the tunic of many colors, and they brought it to their father and said, 'We have found this. Do you know whether it is your son's tunic or not?' And he recognized it and said, 'It is my son's tunic. A wild beast has devoured him. Without doubt, Joseph is torn to pieces.' And Jacob tore his clothes and put sackcloth on his waist and mourned for his son many days. And all of his sons and all of his daughters arose to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said, 'For I shall go down into the grave to my son in mourning.' And thus his father wept for him." And that last verse of that chapter says, "And now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard." Do you need something? Okay, then I'm going to ignore you for a minute. All right, so there's a lot more. There are so many layers to this Torah portion. But we're going to just deal with a little bit of this first chapter. When I was up here the last time, several weeks ago, I told you that God teaches us in different ways. It is great to take that chapter, break it down verse by verse, break down the sentence structure, look at all the layers. But where God has me right now is just asking, what do you have for me to learn this week, Father? What is this Torah portion speaking to my heart? And God teaches me by asking questions. So as I read that first chapter, I kept coming up with question after question after question. First off, the first thing that came to me was his brothers call him a master of dreams. Well, we're only told of the first two dreams that Joseph has here. But his brothers already hated him because of the jealousy thing. But it says they hated him because of his dreams, even though, to our knowledge, he's only expressed one dream to them. I would like to propose to you that because, looking forward, that Joseph's gift was that he could interpret dreams, that God spoke to him through dreams. Now, I propose this to you because we see that he's interpreted dreams, but it says he's 17 years old. That's how this starts. Why did his brothers, he's the youngest brother, well, Benjamin, but he's the youngest one that's up there taking care of things. He's entrusted with watching over his other brothers, some of his brothers, while they're watching the flocks, while they're shepherding. He has some authority here. His father has given him this coat. So he's recognized as having authority on some level, but he's still young and immature. And why did his brothers not blow him off? Why did they not laugh at him, "Oh yeah, in your dreams," and move on? Why did they get mad about it? And when he came back with the second dream, why did they take that as something prophetic? Because they go on to say when they threw him in the pit, we're going to see what becomes of his dreams. Why did they give any kind of recognition to his dreams at all? Unless he had been dreaming for a while and his dreams had been coming true. When he turns around and he's in the pit, later on in this Torah portion, not in the pit, when he's in the prison, and he interprets the dream of the butcher and the baker, I always think of it that way, of the cupbearer and the baker for the king. When he interprets their dreams, there is absolutely no hesitation in him. He says, "Isn't God the one who gives interpretation of dreams? Tell me what you dreamed." He didn't analyze it. I mean, we're not given any knowledge that he analyzed it or anything else. He knew immediately what the interpretation was. And when you read into next week's Torah portion and he interprets Pharaoh's dream, it's the same way. He has a confidence about him that is, granted he's older when he does Pharaoh's, but there is a confidence in him that is unusual in a 17-year-old unless he has reason to believe that this is the gift that God has given him. that this is his purpose, is to interpret dreams? I don't know. It's a question that I got as I was reading through it. But, and here's where our roller coaster starts. When I asked God what he had for me in this Torah portion, what I needed to learn, he brought me to this question about Joseph's dreaming. And as I read through there and I was studying it, there's other things going on during my week too. I have a daily devotional that I read. And so I'm reading the devotional and I'm reading my Torah portion and I'm talking to my children and there's other things going on. And this morning when I got up and I asked God what we were going to talk about, this is the roller coaster he took me on. We started with Joseph and whether this was his purpose or not, whether this was a gift from God. And we went to Nehemiah or Nehemiah, pick your interpretation. I grew up with Nehemiah, so that's what I say. Chapter 1. In the first part of that chapter, Nehemiah is praying, and he starts off, the whole thing is good, but he starts off with, "O gracious and mighty God." And I just stopped there. My heart just broke. And all I could think was, is that who God is to me when I pray? Is he glorious and mighty? Is he gracious? Or am I just praying out of habit? God, I need you to do this for me. Or, God, this person needs help. Or, God, tell me what to do. Am I recognizing him as glorious and mighty? So there's that's over there. Joseph's on the back burner at the moment. That's up there. He takes me to 1 Timothy, verses 1 through 11. And the devotional that I was reading said, the law is good, but the law is not for the righteous, it's for the unrighteous. And I got mad. And I was like, put that book aside for a minute. So then I go read in 1 Timothy where it's reflecting on this, and that's actually what Paul says. And I realize that I am so used to defending our choices to not eat pork, to keep the Sabbath, to keep the feasts. I'm so used to defending that I forgot my why about why we do those things. So that's kind of in my brain, and it's kind of sitting up there for a little bit. And then he takes me to 2 Chronicles, I think, 7:14. If my people who are called by my name. Okay. Have you ever read verse 13 of that, right before that starts? Because that's where he took me. Verse 13 says, "Then the Lord appeared to Solomon by night and said to him," or that's verse 12, "I have heard your prayer and I have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice." Here's 13. "When," not if, "when I shut up heaven and there is no rain, or command the locust to devour the land, or send pestilence among my people, when this happens, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land." We like to, and this is a soapbox, but we're not going to get off on that, but we like to say, if all of the wicked people would quit doing what they're doing and would be saved, things would be better. We wouldn't have to worry about abortion numbers. We wouldn't have to worry about this. We wouldn't have to worry about that. And yet the Bible says that when the bad things happen, it's his people that need to turn from their wicked ways, and it's his people that need to seek his face. So this is another little pin in my map that's going on in there. And then, so all of this, let me just clarify, all of this is to show you a glimpse of how God teaches me, of how he talks to me. Not that it should work for anybody else this way, but this is God and I's relationship. So last night, I get home from work, and I have a phone call with a publishing company because I wrote a book. I wrote 2 of them, actually, for my grandchildren. I wrote, before Coop got sick, I wrote a book. It's just a cute little rhyming book about Coop and what he was doing at 2 when he was a little crazy boy, before we knew he had cancer. And I wrote one for Riley, and both of them have a little devotional thing at the end. And because I wanted them to be able to remember how we saw them at these ages when they're grown. They love to look at pictures of themselves. So I wrote them a book. Had a friend of mine who's an artist draw pictures. They have this little memory. I got an email earlier in the week that said, if you want to publish your book, call us. On a whim, I did. The guy called me last night, and he was talking to me, and we were talking about my book and everything else. And I said, I really just wanted to, I want to get it in the hands of my grandchildren and a few other people that I think would enjoy it and that know my family and that would appreciate it. And he said, I think you're selling yourself short. I think you have a gift and you have something that needs to be shared, and you should consider looking beyond just 5 copies for your family. Well, I tucked that away. Okay. You're a salesman. That's your job. And I just tucked it away. So I get up this morning and I'm like, okay, God, we have all of these pins and all this stuff that's been going on all week long. Tell me where we are. And he took me back to Joseph, and he said, if that dreaming is Joseph's gift, then he is obligated to walk in that gifting. Now, that being said, was he supposed to tell his brothers and his father what he had dreamed right then? Or was that immaturity? Because he was just 17 years old. And we tend to say things like that, and that's been a common translation of, or commentary on these verses. But this is what I'd like to propose to you. If he didn't say that then, would he have ended up in the pit? Would he have gone to Egypt? Would he have ended up where he was and standing before Pharaoh? We know from Romans 8:28 that God works all things to our good. So, whether that was immaturity on Joseph's part, and God could have taken him to Egypt another way, or whether it had to happen that way so that he would go the route he went, and it was just God working everything to his good, it doesn't matter, because in the end, God's will was done. All of that to say, when I was reading 2 Chronicles, God said, your job is to turn your face to me, to do what I ask you to do. And if I don't recognize him as my great and glorious God, then I'm not likely to do that. And the other thing that happened this week, Karen had sent out an email saying, if anybody doesn't want to do the Torah portion again, let me know, because I'm going to set the calendar. I didn't think about it at the time. I'm almost done. I didn't think about it at the time. But I stopped a couple days in and said, God, am I supposed to keep doing this? And his immediate response to me was, take every opportunity to testify. Okay, that wasn't do the Torah portion. So we get a few days down the road, and I was just talking to Max last night. I was giving him these reasons why I did not need to do the Torah portion again, because I wanted him on my side, and I wanted him to say, it's okay, you don't have to. And God took me this morning to all of these places again, and he said, if I've given you something, if I've given you a gift, then it is yours to do with what you want. But if I am your great and glorious God, and if you are seeking my face, you don't have to fear whether you're doing it the right way, or back to Joseph, it doesn't really matter if I do it at the wrong time or I say it the wrong way. God's will is still going to be done, because that's what I'm seeking here. And I don't have to fear what comes of it. If I end up in a pit, or I end up in a prison, or I end up suffering for it, that's okay too, because God assures me that everything is going to work. He will work it all to my good. So we have this whole little roller coaster thing, but all of that to say, somebody, maybe just me, needs to know that it's okay to step out, It's okay if you don't feel like you're mature enough. It's okay if you don't have all the answers, because God's going to work it around anyway. Your job is just to do what he gave you to do, to walk in your gift. So there you go.